Coach, I grew up in a coaching family. My granddad was the winningest high school football coach in Middle Tennessee history, and the stadium's named after him. And then he became the superintendent of schools. But I can remember at 5 and 6 years old having my little letter jacket and riding on the bus with him to the games. And then my dad was a football coach. He lost, so they fired him fast and made him the principal. But they were both in the school business. And then my dad actually gravitated into the sporting goods business and had a sporting goods store. So I was pretty lucky to be playing in Cookeville, Tennessee, with a granddad that was superintendent of schools and a dad that owned the local sporting goods store. So that's about as good as it could get for a young guy. And I went to Vanderbilt to be a lawyer, and I'm not a reader. I memorize things, but it'd be a lesson for all of us. When I was a freshman at Vanderbilt, they said, I want you to take a speed reading class, but we're not going to give you a grade. And I said, I'm not going to take some class I don't get a grade. That's stupid. Well, I wish I'd learned to read better, so that would have been better. And I found out lawyers had to read a whole lot, and I didn't like to read. So then I actually got a geology degree because I thought they were making all the money with the oil business out in Texas. And I didn't know anything about rocks and geology, and ended up with a history degree and education degree, got my master's in education, and transferred to Florida State, where Steve Sloan was there. It was a tremendous friend of mine that we just lost. He was a coach, and I wanted to coach. That's just my whole background had been in coaching. So I played at Florida State, then I stayed on as a freshman coach and got a receiver job at Southern Mississippi for Bobby Collins when I was 23 years old. I'd done some internships with John Cobb, who'd coached at Memphis for a long time, and Panama City Bay High School. And so I just had a very fortunate young trip to become a football coach.
Well, as you're mentioning there, your mentors played a really important part. Going in detail, how do you want to be a mentor? I mean, you've got young coaches, and I know that a lot of them move on to a bigger job, better jobs, maybe. I don't know about better, but give them opportunity. So when one comes to you, what do you try to instill in him?
Coach, first, I was raised in a family that my dad was really hard, really tough. My mother she loved us so much that if anybody else messed something up, it wasn't our fault, it was their fault, because she was going to blame the officials if we lost a game. That's just mother. But my grandfather was the love of my life. He was the coach. I went fishing with him every day. I would walk. Dad wouldn't let us use a gun in hunting because he got shot once. So he wrecked on a motorcycle, so we couldn't use motorcycles. I said, Dad, if you quit messing stuff up, man, we won't have a life. But every day I would work with recreation in the summer to make all the fields and coach the Little League baseball teams with my granddad. Then the lake was 15 minutes away. We'd go fish. We'd fish at night. We'd fish early morning when we got up. We'd go back to work. So number one, I wanted to be the granddad for my grandkids, and we have 6, that my granddad was for me. So it's really important to me that I am the granddad that mine was for me, because that was the joy of my life. And so much of who I am came from my granddad. And he would say things like, always do what you know is the right thing to do, son. And if you have to ask if it is the right thing, it's not. Just do what's right and you'll always sleep good. He would do things like, grandmother would tell me, you need to be a doctor or a lawyer, because that's the only way. There's a lot of, not many Mickey Mantles and Roger Maris's, but there's a lot of doctors and lawyers. You need to be a doctor and lawyer. And she'd walk out of the room, granddad would say, you need to do what you enjoy. Then you'll never work a day in your life. So if you want to coach and do that. So he was the mentor that got me started. I tried to leave home when I was 10, go live with granddad, and they wouldn't let me. It was about 2 blocks down the street. And he always, when he said do the right thing, I always thought to my children and my grandkids, I never want to cheat, and I never want to embarrass them publicly. Because how can I ask my kids to do things right when I don't? So I've always gone by the rules. And I've told our coaches every day, and it gets a little more confusing now with what our rules. But I've told our coaches every day, if you knowingly and willingly break a rule, you're fired. You may mess something up. If you do, we can fix it. But if you knowingly and willingly break a rule, you're going to be fired. And then the other thing I learned through having some wonderful coaches, the older guys coach were always good to me. So when I got out of coaching and went into TV for 5 years, when I came back because I wanted to be the mentor for younger coaches. I wanted to be the guy to help players because you have a purpose. I was on a Nike trip with Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno, and they were 84 and 85, and they were still coaching. I said, "What are you doing?" I think I was in my 50s, and Coach Paterno said, "I don't have any hobbies. This is what I do. You do what you do, man." And he said, "And I got 17 grandkids," and I said, "I don't want to hang out with them all the time." And his wife sitting there, and my wife said to Coach Joe, "I bet you don't even know 17 names, do you?" And he said, "I know all the names." And she goes, Miss Paterno said, "No." He said, "Well, Joe." I said, "Well, yeah, of course you know Joe." And then I asked Coach Bowden, and it was really interesting. I said, "Why do you coach?" And he said, "The next significant thing that's going to happen, event in my life that's going to happen after I quit coaching is my funeral. Because right now I have a purpose, and my purpose is to help kids." And he said, "That's a strong purpose when you can change somebody's life." He said, "The day I quit, I can't do that anymore. I won't do it." So guys like that, when you'd call them, I remember calling Coach Bowden one time and said, "We've lost Oklahoma 5 times in a row. How do you break streaks?" He said, "Oh, when you're good enough and you get tired of hearing it, you'll break it. But he said, you got to be good enough, and you got to be tired of hearing it, man." So those guys, I can remember calling Coach Holtz, and he'd call me back in 10 minutes. So I want to be that guy, Coach, that's been around long enough that when somebody's got a question, number one, they'll trust me to ask me, and number two, they'll have enough respect to want to hear the answer. So that's really, really important to me. So the two things I would say from my standpoint, I got enough money, I got enough games, won, all that stuff. I don't need all that, but you can't have an influence with the kids and the coaches unless you win. So you got to win, and we all want to win. It's what you do. But I want to help people. I want to give back, and that's the most important thing right now in my life.